What happens when you get what some astrologers call the hardest day of the year, the most challenging day of the year, 2 days before a total lunar eclipse? Well, what you get is very likely a turning point, an ending of sorts, a need to be honest with ourselves, even if it's hard, and especially when it's hard. In fact, it is when we're unable to be honest with ourselves because we've had so much invested into some outcome that we were hoping for, something we really wanted to manifest. Well, it seems like it isn't coming together, and that frustration can give way to us needing to honestly evaluate whether or not we've given enough, or whether it is time to change course, to go in another direction, and in some cases, a completely different direction. Well, what I can say is this is going to be an especially emotional total solar eclipse, but it also promises huge breakthroughs with big luck energy, without a doubt, but also empowerment energies as well. Whatever truth that felt so hard to accept, to embrace, to make peace with, once we do, we start to see the opportunity. We start to see what's so good, and that's when we unleash great fortune for ourselves now. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of March 9, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Once a year, the sun conjuncts Saturn in the sky, and when it does make for what some astrologers call hardest day of the year. But really what it is a need to accept some reality, to honestly look at what we've actually manifested and how we feel about it, even if it's hard. But I always think of Saturn as associated with patience and sacrifice. And whenever a planet meets the sun, or rather the sun meets the planet, well, it is always a burst of illumination into how it is that we're using that energy collectively, but certainly individually as well. Now, the hardest day of the year doesn't necessarily have to be, well, too hard. It doesn't have to be too stressful. It might be all that, but Saturn is also about manifestation, and where you've been doing the responsible thing, the right thing, the thing that honors you, keeping promises to yourself, what is required towards moving towards the manifestations you desire, well, this can be a time of culmination, which ultimately means reward, where you actually manifest something you've been working very diligently and hard towards. I do want to say that as we begin this week, a lot of people might be feeling a whole lot of feelings, a whole lot of stress as well. But what I can promise you is, with that heaviness as we start the week, what we think it is and what it actually is could end up being really different. And that is because just the day before we get that exact connection of the sun and Saturn, we're going to have Mercury and Venus meeting in the sky as well. Venus is officially retrograde, but it is, as we start this week, that Mercury appears to be standing still in the sky at the height of his power, closer to the earth than it might otherwise be. And it is going to be at the end of the week that Mercury will officially begin to go retro, while still within orb of Venus. And that means that these two planets, stationary and retro, are traveling together in important ways now. And it is their movements together that, on the one hand, is supposed to bring illumination. Mercury has to do with the mind and ideas and communication and conversation. Then, of course, Venus is about love and heart and the sweetness and light we bring to any given moment. But these two are meeting in the sign of Aries. And Aries is an energy that sometimes forgets how to embrace sweetness and light. Rather, it can be very forthright. And there could be messages that feel like they're coming forward that appear in a very superficial way to be sweet, but actually they hold a deeper energy within them that could be described as frustrating or even aggressive. I'm so sorry to say, but it does happen. And this is the energy of Aries after all. There's a certain impulsivity to what could be playing out now. But then you add to this the fact that the next day we get the sun meeting Saturn. Well, that does suggest, even if it's hard, we have to make a choice. We have to decide, is the path we're on worth being patient with, or is the path we're on worth continuing to sacrifice for, or have we done way too much already And we're just not going to get any more out of this person, place, thing, or situation, even if it's hard. We are at this point moving towards a total lunar eclipse. However, the lunar eclipse is in the sign of Virgo. And not only that, it is speaking in supreme harmony with Uranus and in harmony with Mars. And it is very fascinating to me, this beautifully aspected total lunar eclipse. Now, just in the sign of Virgo, well, Virgo isn't so much about emotionality. In fact, Virgo is very much given to understanding the statistics and the nuances and wanting to more fully examine what might be happening in order to then decide the best course of action from there. But I feel like that truth is going to be elusive until it isn't. In fact, for much of this week, we think we know, we're accepting some truth, and it feels really hard. And then we see things very differently and very quickly as well. You know, I'm reminded of the Matrix franchise. Actually, I love the Matrix. This movie changed my life. And I know a lot of people feel that way, but it is by far my most favorite movie out there. Well, in the Matrix Part 3, The Matrix Revolutions, the tagline to it goes, the slogan goes, everything that has a beginning has an end. But the thing is, and especially with a week like this, it's worth remembering that there are certain things that don't have a beginning and therefore don't have an end. Those parts of us that are ultimately eternal, that are forever. And it's that part of us that we might call soul. It's the spark within us that can feel elusive to grasp under Virgo energy that is more given to the facts. But the pathway to understanding the soul is ultimately through the emotions. The emotions point the way to where our spiritual lessons might lie. And owning the journey of the soul, even just being willing to acknowledge it, to recognize it, is the most powerful way in which we help ourselves evolve and move forward and become more simply through our awareness. The awareness of the part of us that is eternal, the soul that is, allows us to be it that much more and to experience it that much more fully. And from that conviction of wanting to put soul first, everything around us starts to make a whole lot more sense if we're willing to see it. It's getting caught up in the details that can take us off the path of those things that don't have a beginning because they don't have an end. But having said that, there are going to be endings here. Ultimately, those endings are going to be really good. They'll take us by surprise. We might fear them coming on. We might wish that things were different on the pathway to them. And then we have this breakthrough moment that helps us to leap forward. And ultimately, that leap forward is about recognizing how to be more ourselves, but also seeing some truth within ourselves that we can feel good about. Now, sometimes the lesson is valuing ourselves more. That can be the game changer, but very often it's new pathways that open up. The thing with a total lunar eclipse is the very energy of the total lunar eclipse suggests an ending that is a long time coming, that we haven't wanted to see before, we haven't wanted to acknowledge, and now here it is, undeniable. But with this total lunar eclipse, as soon as we do acknowledge it, boy, do we ever feel liberated? Do we ever start to see the possibility of all those things that we have yet to do in this lifetime? And it's about understanding the value of doing things for you, not necessarily for some external validation or person, place, thing, or situation, but because it is for you, whether it's to keep a promise to yourself because it helps you to feel in your power, in your strength. It helps you to bring forward qualities within yourself that you like. And in some cases, I think these are going to be qualities that for some of us, we might have forgot. It's like we'd lost touch with some truth about ourselves until we had no choice but to look at the evidence, look at what's right in front of us to acknowledge, even if it's really hard at first. In the acknowledgement itself, we're already on the pathway towards honoring it, honoring what it is that we feel called to do in this given moment. Now, collectively, I do want to say Virgo, it represents healthcare. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what comes forward in that regard. especially because there is this Saturn and Sun conjunction happening just 2 days later in the sign of Pisces. That's the other healthcare energy. Now, Pisces is the domain of hospitals and other spaces where we might kind of go away and allow ourselves to, whether it is regroup or heal or feel things more fully so that we can move forward. But it is Virgo energy that recognizes the real freedom, the real ability we have to escape the past and even the future is by focusing on the present. It is in the present moment that we then align with a future that's that much more inviting. But whereas it is Pisces energy that steps away, Aries energy, where we find that Mercury-Venus conjunction, well, that just jumps right in fully. And I would even say, yes, head first as well. It is an energy that wants to experience life. And it's the visceral, passionate, intense experience of actually living and feeling the force of adrenaline within us that is indicated by the energy of Aries. And so you can see here, there's such a contrast playing out where on one hand, a lot of us are going to feel really frustrated by certain realities and feel like we want to break free and start new pathways. And we might even be planning for them. But the right beginnings, well, just when we think we know what it is, it might actually be something very different. But the great opportunity here is to let go of the things that are no longer serving us, that are getting in the way of us truly feeling that freedom of being in the present moment and feeling excited about all the things that we have yet to do in this lifetime. As a general rule, even the most harmoniously aspected total lunar eclipse is hard. And this is a very harmoniously aspected one. There's surprise, there's delight, there's things changing very quickly in a way that helps us to feel as if just when we made a decision, everything changed. We were able to move forward, leap forward, get really excited about what's ahead based on realizing what we don't need to give energy to anymore. But still, even with all that positive energy, I have yet to come across a total lunar eclipse that isn't hard in some way. And that's true for this energy as well. In fact, the total lunar eclipse is opposite Saturn with precision at this time. And that means that along with that freedom and lightness and excitement comes needing to understand not just where you have power and where you don't, that's a big part of it, but over whom it is that we have power and over whom it is that we don't. Because at the end of the day, we have no power over anybody else at all. It is only over ourselves that we're able to then find some sense of knowing what it is that we would rather do and then do it to the best of our ability. But when we focus our frustrations outward, when we want something about external environment, the world to be different in some way so that we can be at peace, that is a path that is setting us up for even more challenge, even more disappointment. I learned this lesson way back in the day when I was a student in university. And I remember when I went to graduate school, I was about 10 years older than everybody there, especially at student residences, even though you get students of all ages in graduate studies. But yeah, I had to stay in student residence. I was in a different country. I was in England. And when I got there, I realized very quickly that even though I was in the graduate dorms, there was a party going on. Every single day there was a party going on. And there were some very interesting aromas that were permeating the flat and permeating the buildings. And they were not necessarily aromas that I partook in at all. And I wasn't really into the whole party scene at all. I was there to enrich my mind, if you will. And I remember having a realization very early on that, you know, whoever else is here, they are here to have their experience. And I can't judge it. These are people who are in their early 20s. For some of them, it's the first time they're away from home. And this is how they want to dip into an understanding of that first taste of freedom. I get it totally. But it isn't just that. It's not for me to judge their journey, what I think they should do. And it's not for them to be anything else for me. And that if I was going to navigate this environment for a full year, which I had to do, if I was going to be able to do it, it was up to me to acclimate myself. And so what did I do? Well, I put down towels at the doors so that the smell wasn't coming in. I made it a habit to keep the windows wide open. And that was it. That was really it. That was my power. I learned to listen to something while I was trying to fall asleep so that that would be what would help me, and not necessarily go out there and try to make other people be quiet, which would be a really great way to create a whole lot of stress for myself, which I wasn't up to doing at all. Now, I would also add that, I love to stay mostly in Airbnbs. Often I do stay in hotels as well, depends on my inspiration. And right now I am on the road. It's one of my last days here in El Salvador, and I'll be heading to Guatemala very soon. And what's interesting to me is when I read people's reviews of, what their experience was like in a given location. And it's surprising to me how often I read people getting upset about stuff that the host has no power over. And really, it is not for anybody else to be different. Like, for example, one person was complaining that it was 9 o'clock at night and it was a Saturday, but the neighbor was being too loud. And then they contacted the host and things like that. And I was thinking, it's a Saturday, right? You know that this place is downtown in the middle of Party City. Like, what are you doing here, right? And so they ended up rating the place lower because of that. And I just thought that that was so fascinating. There's only so much you're going to be able to get away with under the light of this particular lunar eclipse and the sun conjunct Saturn. In fact, it is by confronting the limits of our power. In the case of that particular review, they were able to call the host, and the host was able to call management, and yeah, they turned the volume down. But with this energy, with this week, chances are, if you're in a similar situation, nobody's turning down the volume for you at 9 p.m. on a Saturday evening in the middle of Party Central, downtown, in a lively city. Chances are that's unlikely to take place for you. And chances are, with this energy, it invites you to not focus on things that ultimately are a distraction from what's really going on. Because it's a lot easier to pay attention to how other people, places, things, situations need to be different so that we can be at peace, especially with this guy. And we might find ourselves on the receiving end of that, even if we think it's not fair. It is a possibility now. But even with that sense that people are projecting stuff onto us and we don't think it's fair, whatever, or we don't realize that we're doing that, how quickly we just might come up to that wall that shows us the limits of our power. And that's where freedom can really begin. Because it is by acknowledging what we cannot do that once we've faced it and we've stopped sort of, pounding against a wall and instead accepted it. It's the acceptance that unleashes the magic. And the magic is tapping into that beautiful total lunar eclipse. If you find yourself getting frustrated and staying frustrated, if you find other people in your life being frustrated with you, and you've honestly sat with that, evaluated that, come to an understanding of what's yours and what isn't, what's for them to figure out, and where maybe you need to take responsibility or where maybe you're taking too much responsibility. And it's not your responsibility to take. To set that kind of boundary is one thing, but sometimes we set certain boundaries because it gives us control, because we are not ready to recognize what we're really feeling about where we don't have control, because to acknowledge that would be too big. So, for example, I don't know about, dude on the Airbnb page who was complaining about the noise in the apartment. I don't know his story or his reality or whatever. However, at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, people enjoying themselves in the city center, super, super lively energy. The person was even complaining that when they leave the balcony door open, there's too much noise coming from outside because they're in the middle of everything. Yeah, that was fascinating to me as well. But there comes a point when, perhaps sooner, perhaps later, but certainly under the light of this total lunar eclipse, where we have to acknowledge what's really going on. Because it's easier to complain about the noise outside, about the noise of a neighbor, about blaming the host, about complaining to the host. It's easier to do that than it is to say, you know, what's really bothering me? What am I really not wanting to look at? Because to do so would mean too much would have to change, and maybe the psyche isn't ready for it, but maybe under the light of this total lunar eclipse, we don't have a choice. We have to acknowledge it. And it's the pathway to that acknowledgement that's like a slow crawl. But once we get to the acknowledgement, we reach a spinning wheel, if you will. And in that spinning wheel, that's where excitement, enthusiasm, joy, that's where the peace we're actually seeking is found. Not in a neighbor turning down their stereo at just 9 p.m., right? Not in that. Now you can tell, I know it bugged me. It bugged me to read that because I am a big city girl. I love, love, love big cities. I love hearing the noise of big cities. It's very hard for me to be in places that are way too quiet because I love feeling the energy of life and creativity and the engagement of life. I find it really exciting and empowering. And when I don't want to hear it for whatever reason, I'm in my space and my meditation. Well, I have headphones and I take care of it that way instead of getting the world to be something else. But yeah, as soon as you acknowledge it's not really about what you think it's about, like what's the real discontent? That's when we hit that place that is a jumping off point from which our real empowerment, our truth, our joy, ourselves can truly be found. And so very quickly, a reminder, here are the things that are happening. On Tuesday, we get Venus conjunct Mercury retrograde. And then on Wednesday, we get the sun meeting Saturn, which is considered the hardest day of the year. And then on Friday, we get a total lunar eclipse. And that eclipse is what I spoke about at length in the monthly horoscopes. You may want to review those again here on this YouTube page, and stay tuned until later in this video where I will go through the hardest day of the year for each sign. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a valuable and meaningful astrological moment. I'm going to say, gosh, it all kind of works together, especially with a week like this, but I'm going to say the total lunar eclipse. It is once that eclipse occurs that we will enter eclipse season, where the ancients believed that the veil between the worlds was especially thin, and it was that much easier to recognize our spiritual lessons playing out in front of us, as will likely to be the case now. And especially where it is that we've taken on stuff that isn't ours to take on because there's some deeper truth that's been hard for us to truly grasp. Well, that part of the spiritual lesson may very likely appear to us now. It is in getting too caught up with those things that have a beginning and an end, and not enough getting wrapped up in those things that are eternal, that we end up making things harder on ourselves, and they really don't need to be. If you're here, it means that you have so much more yet to do in this lifetime. That I can be sure of, that I can promise you without a doubt. And energy like this says that for those of us on a path where that ain't it, whatever it is that we think we're supposed to be doing and we're not on the path we're supposed to be on, well, that hard truth that makes it the hardest day of the year midweek, that just might be painful. But for others, very soon, and some sooner than others, but really all of us, we're on a pathway towards what ultimately is liberation. And the liberation is found in the present moment. In the present moment, we have the fullest experience of our soul, of the eternal part of ourselves possible. And in the present moment is when we're able to recognize the opportunities that help us to move forward with genuine enthusiasm towards a more inspired and truly exciting future. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here's some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. I have a limited number of consultations now available over on my website, and so does Andy of Wise Ass Astrology. Now, when you head over to the website, you click on consultations, and it is there that you will actually, if you want a consultation with me, you'll get a chance to choose that. You will have a look at my calendar. You can choose the exact time slot that you want based on what's available. From there, you are forwarded to a form. You pay, and then right after you pay, an automatic Zoom link is generated for you. And the amazing thing is that I absolutely love, this is what one of my team members set up, this whole system, because as soon as you get the link, actually, your reading, your moment shows up in my calendar on my phone. Like literally, I see it right there in my schedule and I know right away, okay, I'm going to have this reading coming up with this person. I see your name, how long you booked, and so on. And so thank you so much to the enthusiasm that's been there for having a reading with me. I'm just so very grateful for that. It's been such a rewarding experience coming back to doing consultations to the wider public after a really long time away. And I am just so grateful. It's just awakened something within me that has been deeply meaningful. Now, on the same page, you can find readings with Andy of Wise Ass Astrology. Now, that process is a little bit different in that you choose what you want to pay with him. And so you can actually choose your consultation rate with him. And so that makes a quality astrology reading that much more accessible, especially through Andy, who's just so lovely to offer that. And once you choose your consultation rate, you're forwarded to a calendar and you tell us what slot you want. And then it is going to be one of my team members that communicates with Andy and puts that together. Once we have a time confirmed, you'll be sent a link to pay the amount you asked to pay. And then at the scheduled time, Andy's there, you are there. Now, Andy books basically, I think 1 hour or 90-minute consultations, but he always spends at least 90 minutes to 2 hours with whomever it is that he's talking to. He just loves astrology so much, and he is just brilliant. He's one of the most brilliant astrologers out there, I will tell you. And so I love having him on my channel. I love working with him in any capacity. And yes, to make consultations accessible to as many people as possible. Thanks to him, I'm just really grateful that he is a part of this, a partner in offering consultations again. So again, check out that page over on my website, NadiyaShah.com/consultations, but you can click on the link below. That'll take you directly to that page, and just thank you. Thank you for your trust, and thank you for this moment with you. I'm so grateful for it. Synchronicity University has some incredible programs underway right now. Classes that have already taken place, well, you can get those as instant downloads or sign up for individual classes as well. But it's actually going to be our superstar astrologer, Gemini Brett, whose class hasn't even started yet. So you can head on over to synchronicityuniversity.com. Gemini's class is all about the heavenly houses, and you can sign up now at the full rate. Now, also, I am teaching a program right now, and it is called Between You and the World. It's all about understanding astrology and travel. And oh boy, was there ever a big group online? Lots of people have signed up for this. It's one of the more popular courses I've offered, and it's been such a pleasure just teaching that first class, which is having to do with figuring out when to travel, when you'll get opportunities to travel based on transits to the natal chart. This coming week, we're going to start looking at relocation astrology, which is a very specific technique. Now, another course we have right now is URSULA, STOCKDER, and she is all about awakening the artist within. And that is a whole journey that you're undertaking with her to understand how astrology and its symbolism helps you to bring forward your own creative energy that much more. Of course, we also have a speaker series fully underway now. Last week we had Attila of Xanaphar's Astrology, who I love so very much. And, you know, he's so brilliant. He taught on the dwarf planets. This coming week, we're going to have Scott Hogan, and he's going to be teaching on the cards of truth, helping to understand playing cards and how they help you to understand yourself that much more. Cynthia Rose will help us to understand personal planets in the astrology chart. And then, of course, my dear friend Yuridia Robles is coming again to Synchronicity University, and she's going to help us to understand the different layers of chart interpretation, helping you to take your understanding to another level. And then we will have Kapil, who will be bringing the numerology for this program as well. So you can see here, we've got incredible courses underway now, starting very soon. Individual classes are now available for sale over at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are below. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. I'm sending you guys really big hugs and bursts of gratitude. Stay tuned now for the short horoscopes. And remember, if you are anywhere that I am, I'm always very happy to meet friends and fans on the road. Wrapping up here, El Salvador, heading to Guatemala City. And then I'll be in Mexico City for a full month, which I'm super excited about, to be with my friends and a city that I love so very much. And then I'll be back with my parents in South Central Ontario, which is a different kind of joy. It is a joy to hang out with my parents. That's one thing, and it is a great pleasure as well. So wherever it is that you happen to be, if I happen to be, I'm very happy to meet for a hug. And again, my heart is full. So grateful for you. Thank you. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. What happens when you get what some astrologers call the hardest day of the year, the most challenging day of the year, 2 days before a total lunar eclipse? Well, what you get is very likely a turning point, an ending of sorts, a need to be honest with ourselves, even if it's hard, and especially when it's hard. In fact, it is when we're unable to be honest with ourselves because we've had so much invested into some outcome that we were hoping for, something we really wanted to manifest. Well, it seems like it isn't coming together, and that frustration can give way to us needing to honestly evaluate whether or not we've given enough, or whether it is time to change course, to go in another direction, and in some cases, a completely different direction. Well, what I can say is this is going to be an especially emotional total solar eclipse, but it also promises huge breakthroughs with big luck energy, without a doubt, but also empowerment energies as well. Whatever truth that felt so hard to accept, to embrace, to make peace with, once we do, we start to see the opportunity. We start to see what's so good, and that's when we unleash great fortune for ourselves now. Now, the hardest day of the year doesn't necessarily have to be, well, too hard. It doesn't have to be too stressful. It might be all that, but Saturn is also about manifestation, and where you've been doing the responsible thing, the right thing, the thing that honors you, keeping promises to yourself, what is required towards moving towards the manifestations you desire. Well, this can be a time of culmination, which ultimately means reward, where you actually manifest something you've been working very diligently and hard towards. Now, how the most challenging day, the hardest day of the year, is going to speak to you and your sign? Well, it depends on your sun, moon, and rising. Take all three into consideration, synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And if you want even more horoscopes, and especially if you want to look at how the eclipse will speak to you in your sign, check out my YouTube channel for the monthly horoscopes up now. And of course, even more horoscopes are over in the superstar space at thefutureismagical.com. Aries, with the hardest day of the year taking place in the sign just before yours, there are a lot of things stirring on levels of soul, psyche, and spirit. There's an inner restlessness. You might not be able to put your finger on exactly what it is that's going on, exactly what you're feeling, but there could also be a difficult ending taking place. Now, for all that, very quickly, you will see that whatever's taking place is all part of helping you to create space so that you can do that much more that you're meant to do in this lifetime. But where it is you've gotten way off on a path that's ultimately illusionary, well, that might be part of a difficult sense of transition back to reality. But very soon, you just might see what it is that exits your life. Well, that in and of itself is a great fortune, again, so that you can live that much more fully now. Taurus, friendships, group alliances, you are about to get very honest about your role within a group or honest about a particular friend in your life. Now, this is an energy of extremes, which means that for some, this truth could be challenging. It might be hard to really look at how you're participating in a group endeavor that maybe you don't want to anymore, or it could be that the decision is made for you and there's an ending taking place there. But it can also be that a lot of this energy is playing out with a friend where you see something of their true colors and it might feel hard to accept, but it's also possible that it's a different way. What I mean by that is you might really need somebody and they're there for you, or you might not realize how somebody comes through for you in a way that's just so real. It's so practical, and it might be the last person that you expected, but they ultimately helped you to create greater stability in your life right now. One thing's for sure, when Saturn's involved, what you need is there. Don't try to make it about a specific person, but rather be open and see whom it is that the universe presents to you. Gemini, career, social standing, life purpose. This is a big turning point moment, a moment of truth that might also involve some reward. But if that's the case, it's been a long time coming. It'll be very well earned. It might feel as if, wow, I should have gotten this recognition way back in the day. But now here it is after a period of some challenge and work. But for a lot of Geminis, that isn't necessarily going to be the case here. It's more about you getting really honest about the path you're on, what's working for you, but also what isn't, who your boss actually is, how you feel about a person in position of authority, and whether or not you can still live with it might be part of the scenarios that find you. Regardless, this can be a big turning point moment in your understanding of what a higher, more loving vision for your life just might be. And as part of the mystery, whatever happens now ultimately aligns you more fully with that very vision, even if it isn't totally clear now, even if it looks like there's an ending and you wish that really wasn't the case, or there's some disappointment you wish wasn't there, it puts you on the path towards greater and even better. Cancer, long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters might come into focus in some way now. Now, again, this is a turning point, but it's also a very all or nothing moment. So if you've been involved in one of these matters and it's felt challenging, I mean, Saturn has been here since early 2023. Well, it can feel like a culmination moment in regards to something that's been ongoing. However, remember, you've got the North Node here. You're about to have a big party in this part of the sky once we get into April, which means that whatever feels like it hasn't had the outcome that you desire, well, things might look really different once we navigate into April and all these karmic blessings open up. But for all that, this energy might just play out more personally, having to do with an understanding of your place in the world, figuratively, philosophically, spiritually as well, as you come to examine more deeply what you believe about your world, and do those beliefs actually support you to live in a way that you want? And where the answer is no, well, this is where hard questions lead to empowering truths. Leo, profound change, truth, transformation, regeneration, and wealth. So you can see here, having a hard energy, well, it's an energy of all or nothing. It's not just difficult, but it's also an energy of some manifestation. And so for many Leos, this is going to work out personally, having to do with finally accepting the truth about how you feel or some external person, place, thing, or situation. It's like you're conscious of what it is that's playing out, and you're striving to be honest with yourself in the process of what it is that just might not be working, where it is that maybe a part of your growth means going another way or in a different direction. And it's being aware of your own secrets, if you will, that you consciously keep, where it's serving you, but also where it isn't. Now, if this energy plays out in terms of a financial matter, understand the money you need is there. For some, this is going to be a moment when a lot of financial stuff feels like it solidifies. But for others, there's going to be a sense that where you wanted certain funding to come from might not be the way. But again, the money you need is there. You are engaging valuable spiritual lessons along your way to greater wealth. Virgo, love, partnerships of all kinds are covered here. And so you can see this might not be the easiest energy, but the sun meeting Saturn is very all or nothing in some ways. And so that is honesty that ultimately solidifies connections, or it is a honesty that has you realizing what's gone as far as it's going to. Whether it is your understanding of where you are in love and why, it could be somebody new that presents themselves to you now, and you're having to look at them really honestly and look at how you actually feel. But this could also play out in terms of longer term relationships that are underway. Remember though, Venus is retrograde in your opposite sign, which means that just when you think you know, things could look very different once you navigate into April, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do exactly what's right for you to do right now in light of your unique circumstances. Libra, your daily life, your work life, clients, customers, coworkers, but also how well you take care of you in terms of your health. And yeah, having one of the hardest days of the year take place in a health part of the sky is not fun. And yet it is an energy of empowerment. That's the thing to remember. This is about you claiming an understanding of what's really going on and how to help yourself in a very practical way. And if it is that you need health related advice, you want to go to the tried and true, the specialist, even if you are one of the more bohemian souls out there. I know what that's like. It is now that you actually want to go to the established way of doing things to get answers that you might actually find very valuable. Outside of that, though, this can be a real turning point with those clients, customers, and coworkers in your life now, where you're seeing another person as they actually are and your connection to them. This could mean that one of these people is not working out, is exiting in some way, or you need to be more honest with yourself about your expectations of them, where they're reasonable, where they're not. But ultimately, it leads to more honest relations. Scorpio, romance, flirtation, what the heart truly wants in every area of life. It is a moment of getting very honest with yourself in this regard. And so flirtations can happen now. They may hold great long-term potential, but also where it is that perhaps a new connection or flirtation just isn't right. Well, regardless, it helps you to get honest with yourself about what you're really wanting in love. Now, outside of that, for those of you in established bonds, well, this might be a real moment of understanding whether or not love is actually here, but Venus is retrograde. Just when you think you know the answer, it might end up being something very different. For all of that, this could be a desire to manifest more opportunities related to creative endeavors in your life, and where it is you're embracing that possibility and you're doing the work well, it can be that you manifest real world gains. Sagittarius, home, the past, your living situation, and your family of origin. What's happening at home might feel like a bit of a serious matter, but it may not work out in that way. This could also be about you reconciling yourself with the past, getting really honest about what was before. There might be a lot of feelings, there might be a lot of frustration, but ultimately it gives way to acceptance. That is the superpower when the sun meets Saturn in the sky. And from that place of acceptance of whatever took place in the past that you have no power over anymore, you're able to live that much more fully. You're able to move forward with that much more empowerment. However, I will also say this, if you're looking to buy, sell, move, or attract a new roommate, I would encourage you to be patient with yourself. Remember, we do have Mercury gearing up to go retrograde at the very beginning of next week. And what that means is we're already in Mercury retrograde season. Venus is retrograde as well. Part of that retrograde seasons are going to happen at the foundation of your chart. You might find a place and you think you love it and this is it. It might end up being very different. Pace yourself and be yourself. Capricorn, siblings, cousins, neighbors, one of these people might feel like they really need you now, or you might feel like you want to be very present in the lives of one of these types of people in your life now. It is about accepting the reality of what you can do and where it is that you don't have power over a given situation. Having said that, this might be a time when you're looking at wanting to learn something new, take on a new skill, and you get to glimpse what that process might actually be and ask yourself whether or not it's worth it. You know, it's one thing to go about trying to do something that you don't really like to do, but you feel like you got to do it even though you don't do it well, and actually focusing in on what it is you know you do exceptionally well, knowing that that's where your superpower just might be. You're learning to make that distinction now. Aquarius, money you earn, money you spend, self-love, self-esteem. So for some Aquarians out there, this might be a moment of insight into where you are financially, how you're spending your money, how you're earning your money, what's worth doing and what isn't, what's worth getting and what isn't. Now, this could also be real changes where it comes to how you go about earning. And with Saturn, there's more work to do. So where it is that you're implementing things or you're just feeling like there's more to do to create prosperity, well, ultimately, the work will be rewarded. That's the thing with Saturn, is that gains can be made. But first with this, there might be a turning point, realizing what's worth doing and what isn't. Now, for all that, some Aquarians might not experience this energy financially at all. It might orient you more around self-love, self-esteem, getting a dose of truth of where it is and how it is you could be valuing yourself a lot more in a given situation. And once you identify that, you go about doing it. Pisces, identity, who you know yourself to be, what matters to you most and first. Your priorities feel like in an instant they go through a change. You get very honest with yourself. Now, it's one thing to say, this is my priority, this is who I am. But it is another thing where you realize that the thoughts you're holding and the things that you are reacting to and how you're acting and who you believe yourself to be contradicts what it is that you're saying based on what you're demonstrating. And so this can be a big moment of truth. For some Pisceans, it's ultimately going to be a moment of self-respect, of groundedness that helps fuel a sense of understanding of what you're manifesting and what you want to continue giving yourself to and what it is that's really going to make you happy. But for others, this is going to be more challenging because it's about acknowledging where it is that you haven't been honest with yourself, where it is that your thoughts and actions are one thing and your self-concept is another, and how it is now that you can bring them into congruency is part of how you end up empowering yourself going forward from here. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.